So I was at a wedding reception not too long ago grabbing some food when a friend of mine approached me and suggested that I use the line on the other side of the room. It was kind of a big reception. So why, I asked, and he said, "You see that kid over there?" So I look across the room and I see this kid. He's about 4 years old. And I say, "Yeah." He said, "Well, he was over here by the cheese straws just a minute ago, and he let out this enormous sneeze, mouth and nose totally uncovered, all over the food." So I looked back at the boy to survey how well or sick I thought he might be, as if that would somehow excuse me from eating snotty cheese straws. "Thanks," I said to my friend. Then I carefully slipped out of the line and went to the other side of the room, where I grabbed what I assume were snot-free cheese straws, among other culinary delights. Now, no one I know enjoys talking about snotty 4-year-olds, but sometimes getting undesirable information is pretty helpful. Which is a perfect segue into the subject matter of this video. There are an endless number of ways to get off track financially, but a few are particularly common, destructive, or a little bit of both. So without further ado, here are 5 things that are exceptionally devastating to building personal wealth. The first one is car debt. If you've read many of the posts on our website or watched many of my videos, this probably isn't the first time you've known me to harp on car debt. I'm really not exaggerating when I say it may be the single most destructive force on personal finance that there is. Instead of preaching at you, I'd rather walk through an example so you can see just how impactful automotive debt is. So on the screen, you'll see a comparison of 3 different car purchases. In the first column, we have a new car purchase with a loan using the average monthly payment, loan amount, interest rate, and term of the loan for new cars to calculate the total cost of ownership. In the middle column, we got a used car also purchased with a loan using the average monthly payment, loan amount, interest rate, and term for used cars to calculate the total cost of ownership again. And finally, in column 3, we'll buy the same used car, but we'll use cash instead. Now, all the information in this table is a national average as of 2024. Yes, Americans are spending $738 a month on a new car payment, $532 on new cars, and usually Americans are borrowing about 80% of the car's total value, so we've backed into that number using the monthly payment and the term of the loan. Now, I doubt the outcome is all that surprising to you. Naturally, the new car is the most expensive option, but it may surprise you to see that the total purchase cost is almost $10,000 higher once interest is factored in. That means interest alone accounted for an additional 20% in total cost of the automobile. Now, looking at this table, it's interesting data, but it fails to capture the opportunity cost of tying up your money by paying off car debt instead of investing it. So now on your screen, I've added a few rows that capture what could happen if you invested the difference in lieu of having to make monthly car payments. So if you bought a used car and paid cash, you'd have $45,048.41 at the end of 67 months, assuming an 8% annual rate of return. And for the record, that's a net difference of $36,563.85 better than the used car purchase and $71,967.66 ahead of the new car purchase with debt. So for kicks and giggles, I calculated the total value of investing $738 for 68 months. That's the new car payment value. It came out to $63,651.50, which is another $18,573 ahead of investing $532 a month. These are significant differences in the overall impact to your net worth in a span of less than 6 years. Repeating good or bad car purchasing behavior over the course of your lifetime will make monumental differences in your wealth or the lack thereof. And not only that, I haven't pointed out that all this assumes that you buy a car for at least $33,356. You really don't have to try all that hard to find a vehicle that's much less expensive than this, so there's even more opportunity than our example accounts for. I won't belabor the point any further. It should be clear that it's not an exaggeration to suggest that borrowing money for a car could be the most financially destructive decision we make as Americans. If you want to do a deep dive on the real cost of car debt, I'd invite you to read our post about the true cost of owning a car or watching the video, which I'll link above. All right, wealth killer number 2 is overwhelming student loan debt. Typically, I prefer to avoid characterizing oneself as a victim. It rarely changes circumstances and actually tends to enable apathy, which can take a challenging situation and make it impossible. However, I empathize with student loan debt holders for several reasons. First off, culturally, we tend to encourage people to follow their dreams without any consideration for the costs. The truth is, not all educations are equal, not all careers are equal, they pay differently. So even though the cost of education may be the same, the long-term impacts of that financially can be quite different. The second thing is the cost of tuition in the United States has more than tripled since 1963, and that's accounting for inflation. That basically means $1 spent in 1963 on education would carry you 3 times as far as it would today. Another issue is the government has made promises to forgive student loans, and then not forgive them, and then they're going to forgive them, and then maybe they're going to forgive some of them, then maybe not. I mean, who knows? Another thing is that we expect freshly minted high school graduates to understand the impact of loan terms like subsidized versus unsubsidized, public versus private, the impact of interest rates, and things like that. The truth is these young people are not well equipped to make big decisions about debt that will reverberate for years to come. Finally, I already hit on this a little bit, but very little regard is paid to whether or not the amount being borrowed has any correlation to the expected salary after a degree is received. There's a huge difference between a $200,000 medical school debt and a $200,000 art history debt. Some attention needs to be paid to how much it's costing relative to how much money you'll actually be able to make when you have that degree after college is over. Now, personally, I graduated from college in 2003, and at the time, I thought I went to school at a very expensive time. Unfortunately, the costs have accelerated, and they've done so much faster than wages, making student loans even more of a challenge and burden to clear after school is over. And maybe the saddest thing of all to me is the fact that this information is too late for most everyone watching this. Well, there's no use crying over spilled milk. If you have student loan debt, do your best to get busy paying it off. It's not as if it's going to be forgiven. Or maybe it is. Or maybe not. But if you happen to catch this before you go to college, then by all means, please take note. The loans you burden yourself with in college have to be repaid. Think about your future self and all the fun things you'll prefer to do in your 20s and 30s instead of paying off student debt. Practically speaking, be sure that the amount you take out in loans correlates to the value of the education you're getting. Find out what a realistic beginning salary is for your field of study and try not to borrow more than 1 year of that salary. This will make paying off your student loans much more realistic, paving the way for more beneficial expenses like cars, but not on debt, and maybe your first house. By the way, if this information is helpful to you at all, please click like and subscribe below. That will help our channel to grow. It actually allows me to keep making videos like this so I can help people with personal finance. Debt killer number 3 is career disengagement. Now, when I first started markmoney.com, I had some great ambitions for helping people with personal finance. I actually spent a significant amount of time writing to readers with low incomes because I wanted to help them to understand there is hope for anyone to build wealth if they just save, invest, and let compounding interest work its magic. I've learned a couple of things since then. First, low-income people aren't reading my blog or watching my YouTube channel. It's true, the interaction I have with readers and viewers is all from middle to upper middle class. I might as well go to the beach and lecture the sand as opposed to focusing on low-income financial counseling. It's not that I'm against it, I just don't have an audience for it. Now, the second thing is I've done the math, and I have to admit it would be very challenging to invest enough on minimum wage income to amount to any significant lasting measure of wealth. Instead of trying to make a case for reaching financial independence on minimum wage, it occurred to me that it makes more sense to encourage people to invest in themselves so they can achieve higher and higher levels of income. After all, accumulating a pile of money gets much easier when you have a big shovel. Well, as you might expect, the most assured path to a bigger salary is through education. Now, here's a graph illustrating the impact of education on both salary and job security. Now, this information comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics 2023 Education Pays Survey. I'll put a link to that down in the description below. It confirms that there's a correlation between educational attainment and income. I won't spend a lot of time highlighting every detail of the graph, but I did want to point out a couple of things. First, there's a big jump that occurs for those with a college degree. And if you're just looking at an additional income per additional year of education, there's a pretty good value in trading 4 years for a degree, and a few more for a master's, and then a few more for a professional degree. Another factor that's not really visible in the chart is the amount of time it takes to achieve a professional degree, which is usually like 3 years after you get an undergrad, versus a master's degree or doctorate, and the boost in income you receive. So if you go for a doctorate, you're looking at, I'm guessing, a minimum of 5 to 6 extra years of school. Professional degree like an attorney or doctor, as a medical doctor, dentist, something like that, that's an additional 3 years of medical school, and then of course you have residency and all that, but at least you're getting paid at that point. Anyway, the point is, for a professional degree, you get a bigger bang for your buck for the number of years you spend achieving that degree and the return on your income. And finally, that whitish line that goes down as the level of educational attainment goes up is a representation of the unemployment rate for each of those levels of education. Clearly, it's tied to education. So not only will you make more if you go to school longer, you're quite a bit less likely to find yourself unemployed, which is no small issue, by the way. So if there's ever a case for staying in school, this chart makes it pretty well. Now, if you'd like to increase your salary through educational achievement, I suggest you pursue it until it just isn't practical anymore. The good news is technology has made achieving educational advancement so much easier than it was for prior generations. This flexibility also means you can probably complete a course of study from nearly anywhere, meaning you can shop around for a program that's most cost effective for you. And finally, if you have an employer who's willing to invest in your education, you should absolutely take advantage of it. It's not just the cost of tuition or attendance that benefits you, it's also the years of improved income that come after that. Wealth killer number 4 is buying too much house. On average, Americans spend $21,409 annually on housing. And The median household income in the United States is around $74,500. That means Americans are spending about 28.7% of their income on housing. Now, honestly, that isn't all that bad, but it could be a bit deceiving. Now, generally, I recommend that you keep your combined housing and transportation costs at or below 30% of your income so you have money available to save and invest. This is where the first one about car debt becomes critical as well, because if you factor in an average car payment of $620 a month, that's between used or new cars, we're now up to 38.7% of the median household income directed into two items, a house and a car. In any event, you need to be aware of the long-term costs of major purchases like these so you can begin making decisions to put some distance between your house, car, and the last dollar in your checking account each month. Wealth killer number 5 is divorce. There's an ancient proverb that says marriage is grand, but divorce is 50 grand. Maybe it's not that ancient, but there is a lot of truth to it. Divorce is one of the single most financially devastating events a person can go through. To begin with, attorneys aren't cheap. The average legal fees associated with a divorce are $11,300 per individual, so you multiply that by 2 for each divorce. And the more complex the situation gets, the fees go even higher. Then you divide property, which will always result in a reduction to your net worth, not necessarily because it wasn't already sort of half yours and half theirs anyway, but because many of the assets that can't be split in half, like cars, boats, and houses, will have to be liquidated at a portion of their value. Or you have the possibility of carrying the full cost of ownership of those assets that were previously shared with a spouse. This additional strain often results in a reduced ability to focus on saving and investing for future needs. Additionally, there's quite a bit of reduced efficiency when one household splits into two. There are now 2 households paid for by half as many people with 2 of everything that comes with each household, 2 power bills, 2 sets of insurance, 2 property tax, so go on and on and on. And if you have kids, there's probably bedrooms at both houses, which means you need space for them in both places. Again, it's just less efficient. Finally, taxes and tax-advantaged savings opportunities tend to benefit couples who file jointly, though this is a less costly but noteworthy impact as well. So Curt, are you saying I shouldn't get divorced? Yes, I am. Divorce is like pouring acid on your finances. The outcome is rarely pretty. In addition to that, I have personal views that lead me to discourage divorce, but I understand that it can be difficult to avoid at times. But if we're talking about toxic financial decisions, I would be remiss if I didn't at least point out the devastating effects of divorce on your personal finances. So there you go, you've been warned. These cheese straws are snotty. Avoid them at all costs. For more about wise financial decisions, please check out our YouTube channel. We've got lots of playlists about lots of different things: financial independence, tax efficiency, investing, IRAs, 401ks, Roth IRAs, HSAs, all sorts of different things. We'll link all of that down in the description below. As always, we are grateful for your interest and your time watching our videos. God bless and take care.